Welcome to a football show, Tuesday edition from a hotel room in Atlanta. My name is Braden Gall, and his name is Zach Lyons. Hey, Zach, how are you, buddy? Two different states this time on the show.
I like it. I like that we're now across the nation. We can broadcast anywhere from across the nation. And I also like that we got maybe 5 seconds to talk to each other before we went live because you could not get into your room.
And this is, listen, everybody has the moment with the, by the way, Kingston Group, we love you. SEC Media Days, lots of fun stuff on the show today. We're going to talk all about it. But this is way more important because everybody knows that you can't put like your key card next to your phone or your wallet or magnets or whatever. Everybody knows this stuff. It's not difficult. So I get on an elevator about literally like 15 minutes ago. I was taping an interview with a few guys. And so I was going to shoot up the elevator, jump on and have some fun with you. And I get on the elevator and the door's closed. The key card won't work on the elevator. Which first of all, is such a stupid thing anyway. Like, why do you need to keep people from getting it? Like, people are holding stuff and luggage and
you got to blame the youths for that one.
Yeah, the Utes. The Utes, two Utes, which is in Utah, not the SEC, but it's fine. So I'm stuck. I've literally never been stuck in an elevator my entire life. 40 years old, never been stuck in an elevator. Doors wouldn't open.
So you couldn't even get out of the
elevator. Couldn't even
get. Oh my gosh!
Couldn't even get out of the elevator. Thank God some random person comes by and clicks the button. And again, like normally I'm fine making fun of myself for being a geriatric millennial who's not like working technology. Like clearly the lighting is great today. But I'm on it. Like I've never done anything like this. And I'm stuck. Finally, somebody comes by. Like I'm furiously texting you. And then somebody opens the elevator and the doors open and I'm still on the same floor. And I'm like, thank God, thank you for opening it. I run to the front. And don't get on the elevator, by the way, folks. Run to the front desk, get the key card fixed, get up to my room, doesn't work. Go to get it fixed again, run up to the room, doesn't work again. Finally, they have to get like one of the master keys because the door and the keys and everything is broken. So it really was not my fault. Welcome to a football show.
Well, I guess you're stuck in your room until they actually fix it because, or do you just go to a sports bar and drink until they tell you they got it fixed? Because that's what I would do. I would go to a bar. Yes. I would post up and I would drink after the show and say, let me know when you got it actually fixed.
Yeah. So like, here's what's going to happen. I've got all my equipment up here because I was doing some work and some editing. By the way, YouTube page, rate, review, subscribe, share, turn on the notifications. Lots of really great content from the SEC. We've got interviews with John Talty, and we got Brandon Marcello coming, and Richard Johnson, and like all these great interviews that are up there. Dave Matter's up there. Scott Rabaley's already up there. So make sure you check out all that great stuff. I've got all the equipment that I need. I'm taking it all downstairs with me where there is a bar and all the media workrooms because we're in the Omni Hotel here. No free shouts, but I am not coming back to the room. Like I'm just gonna, I'm not getting in those elevators again.
I like it.
I'm on the 25th floor. I'm not using the stairs either.
What do you have for the rest of the day? Is your schedule freed up? Can you just get absolutely plowed and then like go to bed at 8?
No, I can't. Mike Leach is like working. He's going through the motions downstairs. Shane Beamer's going through the motion. I've got an interview with one of the players. It's like I have to go do stuff. So I'm just going to get all the stuff out of the room, and I'm just going to go downstairs where they've got Wi-Fi, beer, and food, and workspace. I don't have to come back to the room until I need to sleep, Zach. So if they can figure it out before I need to sleep, then we're good to go.
Yeah, there you go. You got plenty of time. So we got the Kingston Group that is a sponsor. Of course, we're going to be in the Cast Collective again next week, where we'll be off the road, so to speak, and we'll have better lighting for you. You don't have to worry about it.
I hate that so much.
But let's get into some SEC Media Days. It's kind of a weird thing to see on the timeline right now because there's not a lot of not a lot of news coming out of this. Has it been kind of, you've got a few different things and a few different takes to talk about outside of our top story, I guess you could say. Has it been a boring event besides maybe like just the gathering itself, just the people?
Well, I've always enjoyed coming to the event because it's largely just like a bunch of people that love college football, talking about college football, a lot of stuff off the record that you learn because you're drinking beer at, 1:30 in the morning, or actually it was more like 11:30 last night because it was all a long day. But like when you're sitting at the bar with, CBS, ESPN, and all these people, and that's where you actually learn a bunch of stuff because there's no news right now. Like there's nothing through almost 2 full days of this event. We've had Brian. Okay, here's the news. Brian Kelly caught a fish. Okay, cool. Clark Lee, poor Clark Lee, like just smart guy, builds a smart program. I think he does everything the right way. And just the air left out of the room as soon as Nick Saban walked away. Nick Saban didn't break any news. He didn't have like a spiel for us about anything. He didn't stand up in his bully pulpit and yell about a particular issue like he normally does. Greg Sankey didn't really say anything on Monday. Like that's also in Atlanta. It's far more corporate. It's less culturally like homey the way it is in Birmingham. Hopefully next year in Nashville it will be. It's just I don't know. The buzz is not here, dude. I don't know what it is. Like I sat in a room with Brian Kelly with there was like 12 people. This is Brian Kelly, who's been in the playoff twice and is the head coach at one of the biggest universities in college football and in the SEC. And there was like 15 of us.
It's kind of crazy. I mean, like, there's like really nothing coming from it that I feel like maybe past SEC media days have had at least something big come from it. And I guess we'll just jump right into it. Maybe the biggest story to come out of it: Missouri bolting to the Big Ten for what?
No, they're not going to leave the SEC, but I think it's an interesting topic because right now, unfortunately, realignment is still very much top of mind. I just had a chance to talk with Brett McMurphy from Action Network, and he broke the story last night that the Big 12 is not interested in merging with the Pac-12. They're trying to absorb schools from the Pac-12. So this realignment is like all that the executive level people are thinking about right now. If you're an AD or president, the coaches don't give a shit. They're down here just worried about ball. And so they're not going to even talk about it. But all the reporters, all of us, that's all we're talking about is who wants to be where. And I asked Dave Matter of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, would Missouri leave to go to the Big Ten if the numbers were equal? And he was like, no. I said, what if Kansas goes? And he goes, probably.
Why? What's the connection between Kansas and Missouri?
They're huge. It's a huge rivalry. It's called the Border War. Kansas and Missouri were in the same conference for the better part of 50 years. They were in the same conference in the Big 8 and then the Big 12. So they hate each other. It's a very heated rival. It's like Texas A&M, but like for basketball kind of.
Gotcha.
And so Missouri, like no one would ever leave the SEC, and the SEC can't kick anyone out. But I wouldn't, if Missouri and the SEC came to like a handshake agreement and Kansas goes to the Big 10 and the Big 10 wants to expand, like would they be interested? I mean, maybe. But Missouri's won 2 SEC East titles. That's more than Kentucky, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt combined.
So gosh, have they really?
Yes. So
wow.
It's not a terrible program. I mean, it's not great this year, but I think it's always kind of felt like a Big Ten program. They're not leaving for the Big Ten, but it is something that is being talked about because realignment catnip is everywhere in the air right now.
It just for me, it just kind of felt a little odd that like. To me, you say Missouri winning 2 seems like too many for a school that doesn't really seem that good at anything. And so, like, I just always forget they are the one team in the SEC that I always forget is in the SEC. I even forget that they even have University of Missouri or Missouri University. I don't even know which one it is.
By the way, Amy Wells very upset with you. Mizzou grad Amy Wells very pissed off at you right now about forgetting all about them. One of the best. Honestly, it's one of the best journalism schools in the country. So there's a lot of great reporters that have come from there. It's a weird state. Like half of it on the outside edges is more like a Big Ten school because there's more like urban population. In the middle, it's very much an SEC school. In the South, it's very much an SEC school. Culturally, it's much like Arkansas. So they're never going to leave. And again, Kentucky has 0 SEC East titles. Vanderbilt has 0 trips to Atlanta. South Carolina has 1. Missouri has 2. And they've been in the league since 2012. So Gary Pinkel was a really good coach for them. They've just got to find their guy, and hopefully that SEC money helps them win. But I do think Kansas would make them think. I don't think they would ever leave unless Kansas goes to the Big Ten. Then I think they might talk about it. But again, this is all just us girls talking at like midnight after a couple of whiskeys. So a
couple of cosmopolitans and appletinis. Y'all just go right into these conspiracy theories and timelines and stuff. I like it. That's where you go. The epitome of student athlete, I thought, was a unique phrase that you sent me in a text describing B.J. Ojulari and oh crap, I had it right here and it just went away on my thing.
Bannister, the wide receiver for Missouri.
Yeah, Barrett Bannister, which is a great, just old time, like 1950s, 1940s kind of name, like Barrett Bannister. That is a superhero name. Bruce Banner, Peter Parker, Barrett Bannister. Totally would believe it if you told me that was an actual superhero. But you said that they were basically the epitome of student athlete. And I didn't ask you why, because I want to hear it with everybody else. What does that mean and why is that important?
So there's a lot of really, really smart, really talented young people. It is the best part of this event, period, full stop. Getting to talk to these guys, no question about it. Will Anderson, by the way, just has already launched his own company about helping other athletes deal with NIL. Like he took his time getting into, and so I had a chance to listen to him talk today, and he took his time, didn't sign a lot of NIL deals, and then instead of signing like a couple small, like he just launched a company that's going to help athletes with NIL. Like that's just one example of this. Bannister is a great story because he grew up in an SEC family where like one half of his family was Arkansas fans, and the other half of his family was like Auburn fans, and he never got a scholarship offer from anywhere in the SEC. So he walks on at Missouri, and then 5 years later, now as a senior, gets to come to media days and represent an SEC school that is now a rival of his family as like a walk-on senior wide receiver who gets to now represent his school. And I just think that is, to me, what college athletics is like kind of really about at its core. Yes, it's about Bryce Young winning Heisman and making millions of dollars and going to the NFL, and that's a part of it, winning championships. But like what it's really about at its core is like young people getting to live out their dreams. And that is what this guy is an example of. And there's so many of them. All the Vanderbilt guys here are doing the same thing. Like every one of these guys is just, they're all so much smarter and more interesting and more thoughtful and much more advanced than like any of us were at that age. And the SEC never lets them talk except for this week. And so I think that's what's interesting. Again, like BJ Ojolari, defensive end outside linebacker for LSU, was asked about basically like what is your advice for young reporters in the business? And he gave a better answer than every CEO and boss I've ever had that runs every media company. He was like, just get to know us, spend some time with us, build a relationship with us. You go to class with us, so why not just hang out and talk? And like, if I trust you and you trust me and we're going to be fair and honest with each other, then you'll probably end up with a really good story. I'll give you more information. Like, that's from a 22-year-old football player. And that's the answer that every CEO of every media company should be giving. And they don't even do that. It's just every owner of every team and the Preds and the Titans, like they don't do anything like that. So to hear a 21-year-old kid be like, yeah, this is what makes good journalism. And I'm like,
The common sense stuff. Like I feel like that should be the it's at some point journos lose their way and
for the
forget what
clicks,
really
for the
the heart
clicks.
of the every story is the athlete itself.
And Saban echoed the same
I was
thing
about to say
today.
that seemed to be
Yeah.
a common question because I was going to say Saban said the same thing and it was like just be honest or something. It's some
Yeah. He said
answer, but
he said
why
be
is
he
that
said be fair and honest.
yeah? Why is that the theme of the week? Is these what to say to student is do are
I,
students down there? I guess that's my question.
I haven't seen a lot. I'm sure that every school has sort of like their communications department probably has some students that are working inside those things, whether you're shooting video or Shane Beamer, famous on TikTok last night for the thing that he put together, like running into the meeting room and doing the whole thing, and it exploded on social media. That's probably produced and helped along by some of the people that are students at South Carolina. I don't know, honestly. Like I think I maybe there's a student group that's here that I haven't seen yet that's like trying to ask these questions. Again, I think young people know that the media is broken and they want to fix it just as much as me, the guy who yells at clouds about the media, as the old guy. And so I think the coaches understand it, and clearly the players understand it. So to me, I think there's a frustration with how media is working. I know you share a lot of the sentiments of that.
It's just funny is that everybody understands it except for media.
Well, and what's funny is that the people, like, I could literally point to the people in the room that would like love to have stood up and clapped when Nick Saban was like, "Yeah, just be fair and honest." And Seth Emerson of the Athletic, who when I posted that quote from Nick Saban, Seth Emerson was like, he retweets it and he's like, and he's a big media critic as well, and he goes, "Yeah, except for wrong and loud is what pays." And that is the problem. The model itself is broken because what is loud and what is wrong is what is successful. And hopefully those to us are empty calories. And that is why you come to us. Hopefully you don't get that. You get some truth and you get some honesty and you get some fairness. And that's our goal on this show and everything else at F Words and at Broadway and at 440 Sports. I feel like that's what we're trying to do.
Well, I want to talk about the Brian Kelly lost and found because he lost his accent. And then he found his fish for the first time in 61 years. Am I right on his age? 61.
I think he's 61, and again, in a room with like 14 people. Like, I could not believe that the head coach, the first year head coach at LSU, who's been to the playoff twice in a BCS title game, is in a room with like 15 people, and like we're just asking him questions. Like we're just able to go boom, boom, boom. And a buddy of mine, Chris Marlowe, asked him in the big room, like, in your best Southern accent, what is your favorite food? And it's the thing that's gone. It's like the one clip that's gone viral. And he's like, well, you have to remember, I'm from Boston. I've got 3 accents. It's Boston, Midwest, and now Louisiana all mixed together, making fun of himself a little bit, which was a smart move. But then he went with crawfish etouffee and grilled oysters, and those are both outstanding answers for
Yes.
Louisiana folk or non-Louisiana folk.
Do you think that's really his favorite food?
If you don't like crawfish etouffee, like I'm not friends. Like I have no
Yeah,
desire to
but I
talk
mean,
to you.
like, do you really think that Brian Kelly has gone from let's be honest, it's a lobster roll if he's from Boston,
It's
right?
true.
I
That's
mean,
true.
it's I don't doubt the grilled oysters part, but let's be honest. He's placating, he's playing to the fan base, right?
I listen. I think every part of your job, there is some part of every coach's job that is to endear yourself to the culture, to the community, to integrate yourself into the university and the people and all that stuff. Now, I, as a lover of all things Louisiana, I choose to believe him, because if you've ever had homemade crawfish etouffee, which is not easy to make, that's like a 2.5 hour roux you got to make. If there's nothing bad about Louisiana food, like
No, no, not at all.
grilled and blackened gator, give me some of that. I had oysters and shrimp and gator last night for dinner, because once I get like south of the Tennessee border, I'm just like, please give me some seafood. We're close enough now to the ocean. I'm good. And I believe him. Like I believe him on that. Now, I believe him on the fish story because it's not a good look, in my opinion. to,
Yeah, what is up with that? You're 61 years old and listen,
Never.
Boston is a harbor town. I get maybe not finding good fishing spots, in South Bend over in Notre Dame, but I
Yeah, it's
mean, he's
hard.
been places where, and he's got the means to go out and do these things, to go even do a simple lake fishing or
Well,
fish in a pond.
Lake Michigan's right there next
Yeah,
to South Bend. It's not
I
like
I don't believe this story. I mean, I believe it, but I can't believe. I guess
yeah,
what I should
yeah.
say, I can't believe this story that he has gone this long and has just now caught his first fish. Was this his first time fishing too, or is this just
I
his first time catching a
I
fish?
sure as hell hope not, because I'm not even an avid fisherman by any stretch.
Yeah,
I married into a fisherman family, but my grandfather's taken me fishing, like, I don't know, like 50 times. Like I'm not a huge fisherman, but I've caught fish in like 6 states. Like, and I'm not even close to what I would consider a fisherman. You know what I mean? And
right.
so again, like my grandfather and my father, we're from Wisconsin, and there's a lot of fishing in Wisconsin, and South Bend is right there, so that's not even an excuse for that. And now you're in the South. So he said, he goes, yeah, I went backwater fishing in Port Fauchon. I can't remember how to say it. It's like 4chan, which is a weird word now that I've said it out loud. And he goes, yeah, I caught a fish for the first time. I think he's 61 years old, and like that makes no sense to me at all. So that's why I believe it,
Yeah.
because why would you ever admit that in public? Like,
No,
I don't
I
know.
mean, I agree with that part. Why would you ever admit that in public whatsoever? It's just it's odd. This Brian Kelly that we've seen since joining LSU is unlike any Brian Kelly that we've seen for forever, right? I mean, like this is a totally different Brian Kelly, and I don't know what that means for the product on the field, but is at least making interesting stories so far.
He changed his approach. So they went 4-8, like I want to say 2017 at Notre Dame a few years ago, and they've had 54 wins the last 5 years. Think about that. 54 wins in 5 years in college football is a lot of wins. And he changed his approach that year, and it was all about this like softer, milder, more gentle, more thoughtful Brian Kelly. And they got to the playoff, and they've been successful since then, winning a boatload of games. And now he's kind of got to come down here where it's way more cutthroat, but you also have to do it with like that Southern kind of like that, I don't want to say charm, but you got to put some Southern stank on it. And so I think he is a very good football coach, and he knows how to build a program. He's done it at Central Michigan, Cincinnati, Notre Dame, and now he's going to do it at LSU. I think LSU is going to be very good very quickly. I don't know if they're going to be better than Alabama ever or Georgia ever, but I think they're going to jump right back up to that 9-win territory real fast, and I think they're a pretty good team this year. I would go over the 6.5 hard. I would hammer that. 8 wins at least, maybe 9 this year. I think LSU is going to be a good football team.
It'll be interesting to see. Speaking of good football teams, but what is the coach doing? Is Kiffin already bored? Is he? You seem to think that he is bored at least at SEC media days.
Yeah.
But for a guy that is known to change his mind, let's just say, about what he's doing in life, is this a sign that he is maybe already planning an exit strategy? And if so, why get 17 transfers in on your roster?
So the exit strategy question is fantastic because I had not thought about that. But I think so. Here's what I think it is. And Clark Lee, unfortunately, kind of falls into this category, but for different reasons. They're just not good in a big room. They're just not. Lane Kiffin is great on Twitter when you could be a troll and like not interact with any human beings. You know what I mean?
So
Like
he's kind of like a SEC version of Mark Zuckerberg. He's only good when he's behind a computer or behind a screen.
that's not actually a terrible comp, Zach. I'll say this, like about just I've done a lot of media in my career. I am really afraid of large crowds, speaking in front of large crowds. Like it's not my thing. I get social anxiety mildly when I get that way, and I do not like it. I can sit in a little room and talk to 1,000 affiliates on ESPN radio as long as no one's like looking at me. I can. It's just me in a room talking to myself. I can do it. But I get I get kind of tense when I get up there. I'm real, my blood pressure goes up. There's vomit on my sweater already, like all that kind of stuff. And I think Lane Kiffin's got some of that. I think he just isn't comfortable being up there in that setting. And frankly, Clark Lee, who is comfortable up there, but doesn't know how to like get out of his shell and just read off a piece of paper. And so I think Lane is just not he's just not suited for the large sets. Like you get him alone talking ball and he's kind of this quiet, chill, calm, relaxed dude. Like he is not the guy you think he is when it comes to trolling and throwing out the yellow golf ball and like all that stuff. He's just not that guy. Like I don't think people realize that he's just this kind of weird, quirky, quiet, chill dude. And like there was no news about Ole Miss on Monday. None. Like nothing.
Well, he signed a mustard bottle, I think is what it
Yeah.
was, or something. That was like the only thing that you heard about Lane Kiffin. Besides, what you sent me is that he kind of looks bored.
And so that the exit strategy thing, I don't think it's bored. I think it's more like social anxiety than it is boredom. But I will say that I think Ole Miss is like 5th or 6th in the West this year, right after one of their best seasons. I do wonder how long Lane Kiffin will be there. I am, because you can only beat your head against the wall of now Kelly's got LSU's got Kelly. Alabama, A&M aren't going anywhere right now. LSU's pretty good. Arkansas is better. Mississippi State's got a heck of a coach. Mike Leach is going today, and he is very confident in his football team. I don't know how long you want to beat your head on that. Like, if I'm Lane Kiffin, wouldn't you like? I think the NFL is where he ends up. Honestly, I think he's a head coach in the NFL in the next 2 or 3 years.
Wow, I would be pretty surprised just because of how the Raiders' tenure ended and all that kind of stuff. But you know,
I will say this: agents like him. His name gets mentioned by NFL agents all the time.
that is crazy.
Yeah.
I'll say this about Lane Kiffin is that you knew that you were gonna be, if that is the case, that you're now beating your head up against the wall and you don't want to be in that environment anymore. Well, what did you think was going to happen when you decided to take that over?
Yeah. Well, some of it is like, first of all, he looks very slim. He looks very tan. He looks very relaxed. And Oxford is a great place to be if you make millions of dollars and you're the head coach. Let's just put it like that. Kiffin has some priorities off the field that I have respect for. let's just say, and I think Oxford's a great place to accomplish those goals. Let's just say,
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot less pressure. Like there's some of it where, again, I think the anxiety and just like the social outward thing that he portrays on a digital platform is not who he really is. And I think that is what's fascinating from like, all right, I'm in Oxford. As long as I just go like 7-5 and 9-3 in between those two numbers, they're probably going to put a statue up of me after like 5 years. I beat Alabama once. Like, I don't, whatever. Like, I just don't think the pressure's there. And I think he wants the challenge of going up against Nick Saban and all. If he gets, you know what I mean? Like, he just wants that one crack to beat Nick Saban like one time. And I could see him like leaving after that season.
Well, we're talking about all this competitiveness and stuff in the SEC. So this goes to something that Nick Saban was talking about bringing the competitive balance to college football and trying to avoid the two conferences or whatever it's talking about. I mean, he says that basically if you had two big conferences of 20 teams, where's the competitiveness? It'll be so much harder for smaller schools, blah, blah, blah. All this bullshit. Because in my mind, at this point, college football, there is no parity to be had. It's not an attainable thing. It is a pipe dream, and everybody should just not worry about it and should only worry about themselves at this point, because you can't worry about the smaller guy and sacrifice money, because guess what? Nobody cares about the smaller guy at this point. Nobody. And when
No,
I say that,
you're
I
right.
mean, like, nobody important that is in the decision-making process really cares about the smaller schools. You may care because we talked about that a couple episodes ago. And these fans of these smaller schools may care. But this idea that Nick Saban is coming out and talking about competitive balance is kind of laughable. And I think we both kind of agree on it. It's just not attainable, right?
So as you've put the question, the answer is you're right. It's not. There will never be parity in college football, in part because the GM and the head coach are permanently interwoven, right? Like you can't separate acquiring players from coaching the game in college football. It's not. There's not ever going to be a draft, basically. And part of what Nick Saban hated about the NFL was that the better you were, the worse it got for you attaining talent. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
when you're in the NFL and you're terrible, they try to give you a chance to get better players.
Urban Meyer had that same complaint. He did not like free agency or did not adjust to free agency.
Well, Urban Meyer is a different
Right.
story altogether. Don't get me started on that piece of shit. But so what Saban wants is an even playing field so that his ability to outwork you and out scheme you and outthink you and out strategize you is complete meritocracy. Like that's what he wants. And but at the same time, it's kind of talking out of both sides of his mouth, because when he complains about transparency and uniformity and parity and balance, and competitive balance is a phrase he used a lot today.
Yeah.
You can't then be at Alabama. Like
right.
Alabama benefits the most of all that. Like they are one of the programs that benefits the most from the lack of balance.
He's one of the programs that has created, and he's one of the reasons why there is a competitive imbalance in the college football. It's him and Dabo Swinney and a couple other guys that have just been repeatedly successful. Yeah, Kirby,
Ohio State.
Ohio State. Whoever's been at Ohio State. So I mean, like the reason that there's competitive imbalance is not necessarily just because of him, but he is, I guess you would say, the way that he is able to recruit and then coach up the talent that he has, and when he gets it and win championships, creates that imbalance. I mean, there's nobody more. Yep. There's nobody that's benefited from the last 10 years of college football competitiveness than Nick Saban.
I agree. And it's almost not fair to, this is what's weird about it. It's almost not fair to his ability, right? Because if it was dead even, then I do think his talent would still win. Like, I think he would still outwork people, out strategize, and out everything. Like, I still think he's the greatest of all time, even if everything was even. So what I think he wants is, as it pertains to name, image, and likeness specifically, he does want it to be uniform and even, and everybody to get the same amount of money, because then his work ethic outweighs Tennessee just spending money on players, or A&M just spending money on players, or Miami just spending money on players. So I think he does want the structure of NIL to be balanced and transparent. So then
I think we all do. We all should at least want that, because that's going to benefit the longevity of college football as a whole.
Yes. Now, the other side of this, when you talking about a realignment and conference, mega conferences, which he was asked about today, that's when it starts to be like, well, Nick, if you really cared that much, you could probably do something about it.
Right.
And this is where you I agree with you. Like, he's benefited the most. He does kind of want it. He is the voice that can probably campaign for it the most. But at the same time, he was asked today about playing HBCUs and playing in-state schools and all this stuff. And he's like, oh, we tried to do that. And Miss Terry's on the board of so-and-so university. And like, that's all great. But what happens when Greg Sankey comes to you and says, well, we're going to play 12 games of SEC schedule, or all Power 5 schedule, or just the Big Ten, or whatever the breakaway looks like in 5 years? Like, does he decide to go along with it? Does he take a stand? Like, he has some agency in this, because everybody else in college football is going to get left behind on this. And I'm the more I have been here the last 3 days talking to people that are like talking to presidents and ADs, and I talked to some folks in the SEC office, like that this is not going where we want it to go. And it is going to end up with 2 super conferences breaking away, forming their own playoff, pushing Notre Dame into a league, and then like 75 other schools are going to become irrelevant. And that is not good for the game long term. And that is where we are going. And that's where a lot of smart people think we're going.
It is the only way to change that is to go into an almost maybe not as many teams, but a March Madness format for the college football championship. Because that you talk about parity, while maybe it's the same teams here and there every so often showing up in the Final Four. It takes a lot to get there, and a lot of teams get some more recognition, some more notoriety, and more TV time
Yeah.
by beating teams that people didn't never thought they could beat. So I don't think it's as easy for the underdog to upset a team. Like, how many times is Appalachian State going to beat Michigan 10-9 when they play 10 games, right? Maybe once. But is that the only way to maybe get something that they're looking to have?
I do think this is the one glimmer of hope here. And I think we've mentioned it on the show before, which is the ACC, the Pac-12, and the Big 12, although I don't think the Pac-12 is long for this world. But the other 3 conferences and then maybe the group of 5, pick a conference. Mountain West is pretty good. AAC is solid. Sunbelt's actually getting very good. If those conferences all have access to a new playoff format, because remember, in 4 years, we don't have an expanded playoff. We don't have a 14 playoff. We have no playoff right now. There's nothing. So we've talked about this before. There's nothing there. This is where we could save some of college football, some semblance of it, which is if we have an expanded playoff that has automatic bids for the Big 12, which I think is going to survive in all of this. They're going to eat some of the Pac-12. The ACC's around for at least another 10 or 12 years, 14 years for the grant of rights potentially. If they all have access to the playoff, Notre Dame has access to the playoff, and then we let that money trickle out a little bit from the TV dollars, that could keep it alive for a little while longer. That is because, again, you went to the App State reference, which I think is interesting because everybody goes there. Don't even think that deep. Think Kentucky. Think Iowa State. Think even Baylor or Wake Forest. Wake Forest played in an ACC championship game last year. Kentucky won 10 games last year. Baylor won the Big 12 title last year. They would have all made a 12-team playoff potentially last year. And if they make a 12-team playoff, could they upset a 5 seed or a 6 seed? Sure. And if you do, then that team is celebrated for history the way a 15 seed is celebrated in the NCAA tournament, exactly like you said. And that is how we get more people interested in the product and more people paying attention for longer to more games. It's tricking them into thinking there's a real championship tournament, right? Because it's still going to be Bama and Ohio State or whatever,
Right,
in the championship game.
because that's essentially all that you're doing. Whatever you're basically placating or giving the illusion that there's parity, even though there's not real parity.
So let's go Tennessee real fast. Let's say Tennessee this year goes 10-2. They get hammered by Georgia, hammered by Alabama, but they go 10-2. All right. Let's say they're number 11 or number 10 in the rankings. In a 14 playoff, no chance to get in. They don't deserve to get in. In a 12-team playoff, they get in. So now they play, if they're the 10 seed, they're going to play the 7 seed. Let's say the 7 seed is Utah. And Utah wins the Pac-12 championship, and they're 11-2, and they're sitting at number 7. Tennessee at Utah, either team could win that game, and both teams would celebrate that playoff win forever.
Yeah.
Now, Tennessee has higher expectations than Utah eventually, but think about just right now in the moment. Like, Tennessee you would feel back if you were Tennessee. Like, we made the playoff, we won a game. Who cares if you go on to the second round and get beat, 30-3? You accomplish something that you're going to put a banner up in Neyland Stadium for. So
yeah, you're giving your fans something to have hope to, because if right now they don't really have hopes of making it to the top 4 college football playoffs.
No.
And the other thing is that it does let your team shine on a more prominent national stage. Whereas really, if Tennessee were to go, 10-2, they may end up at the Music City Bowl for the 15th time. And who's really watching that on national TV besides the fans of the 2 teams playing?
And yes, exactly. And maybe Tennessee's a bad example because if they had Nick Saban, I think they'd be winning national championships. Like I don't Tennessee's above the fold as we say in terms of resources and ability to win a title. They've done it in multiple decades with multiple coaches. But like
But
again,
put Arkansas in there or put
yeah,
Kentucky
exactly.
in there,
Kentucky, South Carolina, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, teams that really have never in the modern era since integration won anything.
Right.
And those are the teams again, that makes up the vast majority of college football. And so again, Pittsburgh and Wake Forest played in the ACC championship game last year. Baylor and Oklahoma State played in the Big 12 championship game last year. All four of those teams have never won a national championship in terms of modern era. I know Johnny Majors won one with Pittsburgh in the 70s, but nothing in the modern era. They're not ever going to really win a national championship in the modern era. But all of those teams could have made the playoff last year. And those would have been huge celebrations for those fan bases and for those teams. And
it probably would have been a little bit more fun games to watch too.
Here's the thing: you don't think a 12 is going to beat a 5 in college football?
Oh yeah, definitely could.
Bet your ass there will.
Especially when
No
Cincinnati
question.
was the 4th last year. I mean, but someone could have upset the 4th seed.
Like, let's just look at the Athlon rankings this year. I think we got A&M at 5, so let's sort of skip them because they're recruiting like Alabama. If you just looked at the top 12 in the Athlon Sports rankings for 2022 for this season, I got the magazine right here. Go to Athlon Sports. Michigan is number 6. Now they're a bigger brand, but they compete. Number 12 is NC State. You're telling me NC State at Michigan, NC State couldn't win that game? Of course they could. Of course they could. Baylor's number 11. They would play number 7 Notre Dame. Great game.
Baylor could definitely beat Notre Dame at that point in time.
And honestly, it doesn't even matter who could or couldn't win. Just is it a good, entertaining product? Yeah. Like this is the other thing we got to forget about. People are like, I am worried about the health of the game. Sure, I'm worried about all the other stuff that everybody is. But you know what I really like the most? Really entertaining football games.
That's why I don't like these bowl games that are specific to this conference has a representative and this conference has a representative. I think that if the bowl game is in they need to tier the bowl games. It doesn't matter if it's I think guess what it is. Is it Big 10, Big 12, and SEC in the Music City Bowl every year?
It's SEC Big 10, but it's been ACC's been mixed in there too, and so
I think it should be the most popular product or your 6. If that's the 6th best bowl game outside of the college football playoffs, then it should be your 2 6th best teams playing against each other, no matter if they're in the same conference or not. In my opinion,
no, I'm fine. I'm fine with that. And frankly, I don't even care. Like the bowl games as a thing aren't even like in my head on this. Like I wish these games again, the ones we were just talking about. If Tennessee is the 7 seed in a tournament because they're 10-2 and they should be hosting the game. It shouldn't be played at the Music City Bowl, with all due respect. Shout out to Scott Ramsey, who I saw last night at the bar. What I think is interesting is Tennessee should be hosting it in Neyland Stadium. But try this, Zach. How about this? On a Saturday. Yeah. In college football stadiums on Saturdays, because what do we love? We love really entertaining, dramatic college football games because it's a sport.
And home field advantage should matter.
Yes,
if you're gonna expand the playoffs, I want you to make it NFL style.
Yes,
and make it where, and I think all games until the championship game should be NFL style, and then again in the NFL you do the Rose Bowl one year, or you do the Orange Bowl the next year.
I agree with you. They won't do that.
They won't do it, but they should. Make the last 4 games that, or
that's what I think is going to happen. Is the last 3, so the semifinals and the championship game will be at bowl games.
Make it important for the regular season for teams to jockey for position in the top 12. And by doing home field advantage, you're not only making the game more exciting in the playoffs, but you're also making the game more exciting in the regular season and making games like Kentucky versus Tennessee matter way more than what they already do, which the last few years, that game has mattered for both Kentucky and Tennessee.
Here's a real quick rundown on a 12-team playoff on how you make it matter to everybody, not just the championship teams. Top 4 get a bye. Okay, so now you're playing to get in the top 4 because that matters. Next 4 get a home game in the first round. Pretty important to be there, right? Between 5 and 8. And then 9 through 12 get into the playoff. So right there, you've already created 3 tiers of jockeying that are really important for every one of those 12 teams, and then the other 12 that didn't make it. It's not hard to do. It's not that hard to overthink this. Like, how do we create the best, most dramatic, most interesting football games? And oh, by the way, put them in college football stadiums on a Saturday. It's just not that hard.
Don't put them on these random days, like on a Tuesday during the day. That's not, New Year's Day. You know what I'm saying? Like, put it on a day where I just don't ever get how they put these good games on random times throughout the week during the day when people are working.
Well, yeah, during time. I guess they assume that everyone has time off or whatever. I guess I don't know.
Everybody's taking 4 weeks off for college football bowl season.
No, who takes like 3 weeks off for New Year's? Like, I get Christmas, and like that's when they don't have bowl games. Ironically, they're up on like the 23rd, and then they're back on like the 26th. What's interesting is the championship game has always been on a Monday night, because the BCS at least, because of the NFL.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, is the NFL refuses to move off of those Saturday games, those last couple of weeks of the regular season. And that's where they could use a little like wink, wink, nod, nod. Like the NFL could play the noon game and maybe like a 3 o'clock game. And then you lead into a 7 o'clock championship game on a Saturday, or maybe like a noon NFL game, and then a 3 and a 7 semifinal on Saturday, right? Like a double header. And I think the ratings would be huge for that.
Oh yeah, definitely. All right. That is it. Take us home.
Oh, that's it. All right. Hey, apologize about the technical difficulties and the lighting issues here, but I am sitting in a hotel room that I may or may not be able to get back into this time next hour. So we'll see.
Now, are you in a room with 2 queens?
Yes, I chose the view.
Will you have slept in both beds by the time this is all over?
Do people do that?
Oh, I do it all the time. I switch beds.
Switch beds?
Yeah, might as well. They're there for a reason, right?
I never thought about that. It never crossed my mind. But I appreciate that. They said, do you want a king or do you want the view? And I took the view. And check out the Instagram account, 440 Sports. There's or 440 Media. It's actually a really great hotel. And the College Football Hall of Fame is great. If you like college football, you should come down and check it out. It's pretty cool, especially not during SEC Media Days. But Kingston Group, of course, our title sponsor, buildkg.com. Make sure you check them out. They are a fantastic company, of course, Nashville's locally owned custom home and remodeling firm. Go check them out. We'll be back in the Cast Collective studio next week. And stay tuned to the Twitter feed, 440 Sports. We'll announce when the next show's coming Friday morning right now. We're tentatively scheduled for. So check that out. We'll give you a whole recap of the entire week, some more, talking season stuff. F-Words Pod, right? What do you got this week, buddy?
Having Justin Graver of TitansFilmRoom.com, or not .com, but just at Titans Film Room. He's going to be on, and we're going to talk. He wants to get in on the Colts slander that Mike started off last week, and everybody loves some Colts slander. We'll talk about Adoree Jackson's non-news to anybody interview with Steve Smith. We're going to talk about he also has some other issues that he has seen with Titans social Twitter stuff. And then we're going to talk about some important storylines heading into training camp that starts next week. Rookie training camp starts on Friday.
Oh, can't wait.
And then next week starts official training camp.
Yeah, can't wait to be out at practice for the Titans. That's for sure. If you want complete and more coverage, of course, from SEC Media Days, check out the 440 Sports YouTube page as well. All the podcasts as well. We've got literally like almost a dozen interviews that are going to go up this week with people from all over the conference. So make sure you check that out. I'll do another shout out here. J.E. Dunn, our title sponsor for all of our SEC Media Day coverage as well. So lots of shout outs here at the end of the show. Zach, thank you so much for being patient with me and my Omni Hotel. Okay.
I like it.
My name's Braden. He's Zach. Thank you guys for watching and hanging out with us. Rate, review, subscribe, share the show, all that great stuff. Kingston Group, we love you. This has been a football show live from Atlanta.